you so much once again for sticking to Y254. Welcome back to the Power Talk Show. I am Cheryl Blessing, and before we took a break, we were having a conversation on gender-based violence. I want us to tackle gender-based violence, and you can go to our platforms at Y254 and let me know why you think GBV cases are on the rise and what we can do to tackle the matter. I am joined here by two amazing guys who have been giving me some insight on what GBV is, what are some of the causes of it. I'm here with Zipporah and Habib, and one thing that we have established before we took the break was the fact that gender-based violence is something that it's first of all, it comes from your childhood, and it's affected by the environment we're in, the upbringing that we go through, and some small issues that can be easily dealt with, but we ignore. And Zipporah, you were just telling us a few forms of gender-based violence. We've talked about the most common is the physical, but we have emotional gender-based violence. We have psychological gender-based violence, and you've talked about some small issues that people can neglect, but they deeply affect people. You've talked about rejection in marriages, towards children, financial control, and that restriction of earning your living and being free with your money. We've talked about FGM, female genital mutilation. It is a form of violence.
Even early marriages.
Even that is a form of violence.
As a young girl to go and get married and you drop out of school because the person who is coming in has a lot of money and can bring in a lot of bride wealth. That's a form of violence.
It is a form of violence.
It's denying you the opportunity to go and be yourself.
That is true. And what gender-based violence has, it creates a very deep impact on the victims particularly. And we have more cases these days of men experiencing FGM, GBV, and more of them are going through that in their marriages, within their communities, sometimes in their own homes. And a lot of those cases are either going unreported, or when they're reported, they're not taken as seriously. Habib, I'm sure you've come across a few cases of men who've experienced GBV, and I'm wondering what effect does that have on the victims? What do they have to deal with? How do they have to maybe experience life after that experience has happened to them?
You know, funny thing enough, and when we talk about GBV, mainly people tend to think that it is a women thing. Yes, we know in terms of, yes, women and girls are vulnerable, and majority of the perpetrators are men, but that doesn't mean that men actually do not go through any form of gender-based violence. The most form of gender-based violence that men go through is the emotional and psychological form of violence, because it is also difficult actually to be able to prove that Cheryl insulted me, you intimidated me. There's an aspect of the verbal, you see, the verbal insult and all those kinds of things that men actually go through. And it is very difficult for you to be able to even to go to report or even prove this. And the worst part of it, as a society, you see, as men, you cannot be able to speak out. You have to be strong, you have to be a man. Each and every time unaambiwa kuwa mwanaume ni kukua ngumu. And these are some of the things that actually, as men, they keep on compiling. So the moment they project, it becomes something worse than. But now even the system, we haven't created a proper legal system and mechanism on how men can also be able to report even these cases to police station. To Tafika police station, it is even difficult. You cannot even go and even discuss with your fellow men. You see, wanaume ni watu, for example, they can be, wanaweza kaa hapo for 1 year hata juu jina mtu. Na kujua tu jakababa and all that, you see. Mtu wa Meru. And because we do not go deep to be able to have the conversation. And this actually have a long-term impact, because at the end of the day, there is that aspect of emotional breakdown. You cannot continue to actually even socialize with other people the way you used to, because it also lower your self-esteem in one way or another. It undermines you. It undermines your dignity, and you don't feel worthy enough as a man. You see, and for example, if you cannot, with the high cost of living, and the situation the way it is right now, where as a man, naturally we are the providers, we are the head of the family and all that, with all those said and done, then you cannot be able to provide for your family, then where does leave you as a man?
Yeah.
And in between, sometimes people may even withdraw. They cannot be able to actively contribute even to go to work, or maybe even contribute to development of the society in whatever they're doing. And this also can also be able to lead to divorce, breakups in the family, and even it has some effect even to the children. Just the way Zipporah was saying, that you're growing up and seeing, witnessing some of the violence that either your mom or dad is going through and all that, and this thing also, because as a child you cannot, there's nothing you can be able to do, and later on, in later years, these things start projecting itself out there. So I think in between we have also left men into the discussion around GBV, because just the way I've said, when we talk about GBV, kila kitu ni ya mwanamke, and you see men also create some attitude towards the conversation, which should not be the case, creating that aspect of barrier. And the stereotypes and the norms the society has created around a man being the provider, because at the end of the day, with the current situation, even women are working, they can be able to provide.
Yeah.
The essence is, how then can we be able to redefine some of our values as a society, because we are dealing with a system where, on the other end, unajua juzi we had a community dialogue to be able just to have a conversation, and it came out like women are saying, pesa yake ni yake, pesa yangu ni yetu sisi wote.
And has it changed?
Yeah.
So how do we change this? Because with the current setup, a good example, wakati wa COVID, people lost their job.
Yeah.
You see, and maybe for example, I'm married, I've lost my job, and even the wife still have the job. Then who can we be in a situation where the wife can continue providing for the family, as I keep on finding ways on how I can be able to find another source of income?
Yeah.
Is it possible? Because at that particular time is where the challenge comes in, because you will sit with the men and they'll tell you, these women, ikifika TN and provide only 1 month, it is now chaos in the house.
Yeah.
You see.
And I think that also, some instances like that, they also create a shift in the power dynamics.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when women feel like, I'm the one who's providing, I'm the one who's doing this, then they can feel like, I don't even need this man.
Yeah.
Then the verbal insults, the emotional abuse starts coming in. Some people even go to the extreme and, you know, even get physically violent.
And even
they can get
suicide.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
And those are some of the effects that victims have, because of the abuse and all that, you're deeply affected psychologically, physically. It can also affect you. And on the counter side, we have been seeing also GBV for women. And first of all, before I continue with that, another reason why we also need men on this conversation is to also help them understand why some of the things they're doing can be perceived as GBV.
Yeah.
Because we have been getting cases of femicide, which are on the rise. And some of these cases, it's because of either the frustration or an anger a man has towards a woman. Maybe a relationship went south. Perhaps it's someone who's just resentful towards women. And it's perhaps because of mental issues that have been unaddressed. Now, Zipporah, how can the victims particularly, how can you identify and say, isi mapenzi, ini inaenda kukua kifo? Because, you know, so many people, the way we're talking about, some people are told, kupigwa ni kupendwa.
Yeah.
And how can you identify, this is not just an insult, this is violence? Even with kids, what's the limit between discipline and being violent towards a child? So what are some of the things that we can take note of just to make sure that we can avoid or get out of the situation before it gets to the extreme, for both men, women, and children, so that they can seek help?
Thank you. You've just reminded me what you're calling kupigwa kupendwa. We call it gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
You know, these are some of those things you've had growing up, and we just call them rumors without a specific what base, eh?
Yeah.
And you cannot even verify them because it is the way you are cultured, eh? Mwanamke akiolewa, you should hear those wedding ladies. You know, there's always that wedding lady, the cake matron, who comes and she has to give a small sermon before you cut the cake. You've seen them, eh?
Yeah.
Most of them will really misadvise you. Ati sasa Cheryl, ujue tumekuhamisha kwako, sasa kitanda, you know, it's the parents from your side will give the bed, eh?
Yeah.
Sasa kitanda kimehama, so we don't expect you to go back. You go and make your own home. Sure enough, it's good. Go and make your own home. But what if it's not possible? Because we've cultured and we've brooded a group of people that cannot really handle other human beings. Yeah? You've already have your own inadequacies growing up. And then you come and we expect you to hold our daughter. And so you're there mistreating them. Yeah? I didn't tell you that there's a form of violence we call the sexual violence. Yeah? When we were talking about the forms, yeah? Sexual assault, it's a form of violence.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in our law system, did you know, Shelley, that you cannot report someone if you're in a marriage setup? There's nothing like rape. Are you aware of that?
That's true. I was actually mentioning to a gentleman yesterday that rape can happen in marriage, and he was so shocked.
It can't.
Yeah.
You know, you put the legal system wondering now, how are we supposed to know when, because you said I do. Now how are we supposed to know this was not it and this was it? Yeah. So in a marriage setup, rape does not exist. You cannot deny someone conjugal right and then mpelekani ati nini. That one does not happen. So we are talking about how do we know that now this is too much. Let's start by saying this. Can Kenyans normalize criminalizing these acts? It is never right to slap me. It is never right. However mistake I had done, it is never right to slap me. I always believe there are many other ways of conflict resolution. There are other skills you could use to address me as an adult or even as a child. So it is never right for this person to come and call you names. Irrespective of how you look, irrespective of how you appear, it is never right. And therefore, I want you to understand that we cannot now sit and tell you, akikuslap, bora tu ni mara moja, we vumilia. Apana, you sit down, let this person know that I cannot stomach this. Let this person know, you know, I was watching a movie of a university girl, you know, and she was going and she's being abused by the guy, and anapigwa mpaka she has black spots all over the body, and then goes out, and then she comes back. So what is this causing you to go back? Because, you know, in psychology we say if you're walking in a forest and you see one tree twice, you are lost. It's you who is lost. So if you're going to the same relationship, it is you who has the problem. So don't sit there and allow this son of a man to come and chop off your hand so that now you can raise alarm. Yeah? So it is never right to be beaten or to be abused or to be what. So that it should be a red flag if someone deals, if that is their way of conflict resolution, it should be a red flag. Number two, for a child, we always, you know, we are African, eh? And I believe there is a difference between the way we parent children in Africa and the way the West do. Because the idea is, the West believe you should bring up a fear-free child. Fear-free child. That child should not have fear, I don't know, mom will do this. You should see the way you are acting when you broke the thermos, the family thermos. You start crying long before you are beaten.
Ni mbali, upoteze 20 bob on your way to the shop.
You start crying long before you're beaten. Because, you know, when they hold you, walikuwa nasema nikikushika na hii mikono inakula ugali. And you know, that's already a threat. It's a form of threat, yeah? So we should bring up a fear-free child. Nevertheless, we don't, again, allow them to misbehave. So spanking here and there is not the best way, by the way. Beating up children is not the best way, but now here and there, being Africans, you can spank, yeah? But now that does not mean that you cause bodily harm to this child. You've heard of places where the child has bruises, you know, wounded, broken ribs, legs, hands, and everything. Now that should not be the case. It should not be the case. Or even, you know, that form of violence should not be there, because I believe there should be some moderate forms of correction. Even in a marriage setup, this person who is there and is manipulating your emotions, you know, manipulating your emotions in the sense that they never want to see you ever happy. You're seated there relaxing, nasema, huku kazi watu ni kukaa tu. Like sasa, mimi kazi yangu ni kuenda job ni watafutie. That's a form of abuse. I mean, I shouldn't take a break Are you seeing that? Yeah. So we can never let us tell our people that one of the things you should not take for granted is this person who is coming and is trying to abuse in whatever way. Never raise your hand at somebody.
Yeah.
Never raise your hand at somebody. And most of the people, there are these programs I see on media of the prisons. Yeah. Most people who are in the prison really didn't deserve to be there. They only acted out of anger. Just one. Imagine somebody maybe has their own issues, you know, by the time you grow up, there are all manner of disorders, yeah? Maybe someone is epileptic. Mgonga tu mara moja hivi na even if collapse and died. And you're there serving a life sentence just because of one moment. So that is why we tell people, refrain from that. But even when we tell them that, we cannot forget to tell ladies, tame your mouth.
I love
Tame
that.
your mouth. You
And
know, there are people...
There are multiple ways of conflict resolution within marriage and even for children. You know, there's a way of disciplining with love. And I think that's one thing that we also need to insert. You need to have love in every single action you do. In every word you speak, every situation. Move from a place of love. Because if you do it from something else, then that is, you can be violent. You can get to a point where you're speaking out of term and you don't understand that you're wounding someone and you're speaking out of spite. So let me sample some comments before we continue. We have from Facebook, Julius Murega is tuned in from Nyeri Town. Thank you. Mengich KE is watching us from Marigat in Baringo to call live. Asanti. Sironka Pasiani says, I think we should consider the motive more to understand if they are the same, then we can know exactly what we are facing. I totally agree with that. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We're trying to understand what is the motive behind it. We have broken down and we've figured out mostly it's either childhood, environmental, economic, some external factors can influence the internal. And if someone is not willing to put in the work, if you're not willing to go to therapy and address some of the issues that we've carried and the traumas, then it's very easy for you to spread that. Now, as we're getting to a point where we have understood what GBV is, we have seen the various forms, we have seen that you shouldn't do this, this and that, or things that you should take note of. How do we get out of these situations? I want us to, as we're winding up the conversation, so I want us to figure out how we get out and what to do afterwards. So let me direct the how to get out to Habib. How can we get out of that? And what are some, because with Karibangi Center, you have some services that help rehabilitate people. But what other forms of help are there to help people just get better and recover from that situation?
So basically, allow me just to pick it from the aspect where you have left it. I think from the childhood level, we need, in between, you need to introduce conflict resolution skills, or maybe how to deal with life challenges in our curriculum, so that as a child, as you grow up, you know how to be able to handle life challenges. We also need to be able to teach our children in terms of the emotional intelligence, because that is actually where also sometimes the problem lies in between. How do I understand your personalities? How do I know how to relate with you? How I should be able in a position to understand how you react to some of the issues. When we have that common understanding in between, it will be able to help us so much. But in terms of actually even what we are doing at the community level, because actually we are facing these cases each and every day, and sometimes it's overwhelming, being the fact that for us, we are volunteers and we're just taking our part to be able to see how best can we be part of the change that we want to see within the community, rather than each and every time complaining and talking about these cases without taking action. There is need for more awareness and sensitization. How can we be able to create awareness within the community, sensitize? How do we demystify some of the norms and stereotypes that we have normalized as a society? How do we involve the community into the conversation? Bringing both men and boys into the conversation, and them being able to understand that we need to walk side by side by women, and working to be able together to create a society where each and every one of us is safe. The other part of it could be the legal perspective. There is a lot of gaps in terms of the tedious process and the justice process, in terms of also just following up the case from the police station, because we also have police officers who have no understanding around issues of GBV. So how do we build their capacity, and how do we work collaboratively both the police, the community, and even the village elders, because the first respondents of these GBV cases are either village elders, wale mama vijiji, wazee wa vijiji, chief, and even community health promoters, the CHPs. So in between, because when you report case, you don't know even, as a person, you don't have a clear understanding of what GBV entails. So if we can be able to build their capacity and put them in a better way, they can be able to handle these issues, then it can be able to make a lot of sense. We need to be deliberate in terms of allocating more funds into the GBV sector, because right now we always find a situation where, for example, we're handling a case where umepata bibi amepigwa na watoto and all that. You want to help this woman to pursue the path of justice. Na nakuuliza, ule mtu nataka kupeleka jela ama nataka kushika is the breadwinner? Where will I go with the children? And at that particular time, even if you want to rescue a child, there is no safe houses. The ones we are relying on are private or maybe non-governmental organization, which sometimes is not even enough. And it's actually very difficult to be able even to ensure that even as you work with the survivor in the aspect of justice, they're actually even safe. Because at the end of the day, someone will rape your daughter today, they're taken through court, wameenda kotini kidogo, they've been released on bail, they're back still to the community and also still intimidating you and threatening you, trying to be able to ensure that there is no justice in between. So how can we be able to evacuate you from that same environment and put you in a safe house somewhere as we work with you?
Yeah.
There is need of that aspect of the legal services and legal aids just within the community to help the community in terms of understanding the legal perspective and working with community collaboratively. I say this should be a collaborative approach. But in between, we also need to be able to address the issue of corruption. Corruption impedes justice. And we are seeing it in the police stations. We are also seeing the government is not actually serious. I'm sorry to say so, but that is the reality, because even you see yesterday people were on the street in calling on the government to be able to put an end to killing of women, and people were tear gassed and all this.
And there's so many gaps.
And there's so many gaps in between. Because, for example, sometimes you can go and report the case to police station. You are told, go to Nairobi area, ujaze P3 form. At that particular time, the survivor, or maybe in the victim for the aspect of access to justice, do not even have a transport to facilitate them there.
Yeah.
So how can you be able to have them?
And I feel like
scenario where even you go, you are being told you have to pay 300 shillings for P3 form, or even 1,000 bob.
And I feel like that's something that we need to address collectively, and perhaps address it also to the legal team. Because even some of the things that we're talking about, we have some laws that are outdated. We have some people who are put in positions to address these issues, but they don't have the education, they don't have the resources. And unfortunately, that also leaves us behind, because we're trying to move forward. But because of those small hindrances, it's almost impossible for us to get away from that space. And right now we're in a space where we collectively need to come together. The women have been coming together for the ending femicide, but it's deeper than that. With the FGM, we have seen some people collectively creating centers, schools for victims to get away and escape and manage to live normal lives. But there's still a lot more that we need to do. So ZP, I want to hear from you. Let me know what additionally we can do. Because, you know, we were even talking about, there were sometimes we witness people being beaten up, tunasema ni mambo ya watu wawili. So how can we also hold perpetrators accountable as the community, as individuals, outside from the legal frameworks, outside from the government? What can we individually do collectively to ensure that we hold this, the perpetrators accountable? So I'm sorry, we have a few minutes left, so perhaps you can let me know in under 2 minutes.
All right. I'm thinking the first thing that will always work in any society setup is, number one, as he had said, create awareness. Enough awareness. Let people know this is it and this is not. And number two, let us not hide these people. You know, you got married, and maybe by chance you had gotten a child, a daughter, and you're coming into this man, and this man starts molesting your daughter, and you're quiet about it. Let us go out vocally and you know, and shout. Let us shout that this is it. This is what this person is doing. Otherwise, if you don't criminalize this act, they'll continue. Number three, it is okay to seek help. Do not feel, tunasema usikufe na shida yako. Do not sit and feel like it has never happened to any other person. Now I'll get out of my marriage and this will happen. It is okay to get out of marriage with all your hands and all your body parts, as opposed to die in this marriage. Or, and you know, dying doesn't have to be the physical death. You could be in a marriage but it died 20 years ago, yeah? So usivumilie shida. There's a song that says matatizo tumeyazoea. Usizoe matatizo. It is okay to talk to a close friend, to a pastor, and there are organizations. The organization, even in a church setup, talk to your a fellow person, a trusted person. If you are able to go to a counselor, talk to a counselor. This is what is ailing. This is what is happening. They'll always help you out through the talk therapy, and they'll also help you know that this is not it. This is not right to stay there. So by all means, they even community networks as they have, yeah, they also help. And something else we need to tell people, because I know it is actually part of what is perpetrating that, yeah. I told you, don't provoke anyone. Cheryl, don't provoke anyone. You've had these people who provoke you, and that is why they were stabbed, yeah? If only you sealed your mouth, at the height of anger you sealed your mouth, you will not be in some of these places that we are finding ourselves. You had people killed in Roysambu, yeah? Out of greed, I could call it maybe greed for some. Uliambiliwa tu pesa mingi, and then you're there. So let us learn to maybe talk out, and it will help us.
Thank you. And I think those are very practical things that we can do from our own personal levels. And one thing that I want to very much strongly reiterate is if you're a victim, speak up.
Sure.
Whether you're a man, woman, child, speak up, seek help. It's very possible for you to get help, because we are advancing more and more. True. And hopefully we'll get to a day where this is something that we do not have to deal with. That's where we'll end it for today. Unfortunately, time has run out for us for today, but I hope you have enjoyed this conversation. It's going to air again tomorrow between 1 and 2 p.m. It's also going to go up on YouTube in case you want to refer back to it. But that's it. It's been a very wonderful conversation. We will see you guys again next week, and we'll definitely have this conversation once more, because there's a lot more to be said about it. For now, have a lovely evening. My name is Cheryl Blessing, and this has been the Power Talk Show.
Time imeenda haraka.